An idyllic boat ride, the bounty of the ocean. Don't stay out too late. Welcome to Dredge. How's it? Naba here. Dredge is an adventure fishing game released in March 2023 by Black Salt Games. In it, you take the role of a simple fisherman making their way in the world. It's a delightfully simple game with some dark twists, and it really worked as a relaxing escape. The first thing you notice is the beautiful vistas. It isn't that there's a high poly count or anything, but the artist took very simply constructed shapes and made it work. The ocean is the real star as it bubbles with swells rising up beneath your tug. There's something very soothing about the atmosphere, especially in the mornings and early evenings, as the warmth of the rising and setting sun paints the world in an orange hue. In a similar way to Valheim, although in completely different style, the developers took not overly complex constructions and gave them a vibrance via the lighting. When night falls, it's appropriately dark. Your small craft, out there, in the open mass of the ocean, surrounded by a tiny pool of illumination, perfectly sets the tone Dredge is trying to elicit. It's emphasized by your recollection of the haunting music from the towns, and the lack thereof on the ocean at night, with just the lapping of the waves to keep you company. Your mind wanders to what's actually down there in that inky abyss. You really see that this is a game of juxtapositions. The freedom of the open sea, the imprisonment of a blanketing night, the serenity of a small oceanside village, the horror of what might have gone on there. The unsettlingness I mention is pronounced by the character design. These are crafted to appear like paintings with blocky pieces resembling brushstrokes. It emphasizes the uneasiness as each NPC is full of character despite being a 2D image. But there's something about nearly everyone which set me on edge. Something's just not right about these island dwellers. The unease is picked right up by the story. The premise is simple. You, the new fisherman of Greater Marrow, made a monumental introduction by becoming shipwrecked on the jagged rocks surrounding the island. You need to settle your debts and make your way in the world. And that you do by traveling around the islands on the map and meeting the locals. The writers did a really good job with the atmosphere, as even when someone is being kind to you, you feel like an outsider. You aren't in the know. There's a deep, dark history to this archipelago that people are hinting at, but no one is willing to speak about it outright. It's just really unsettling, and it throws a patina of terror upon everything you're doing on the lonely waters. I won't go into it anymore because the story really sets the whole tone of the game, but it gives layers to the simplicity of the gameplay and a spark of horror to an otherwise benign setting. One hint though, make sure you do pick up the bottles floating in the water and read their contents. It really helps flesh out the proceedings even more and learn about some of the characters. The basic gameplay in Dredge it's quite straightforward and it's relaxing. You're a fisherman, so you best get out there and fish. But be careful, there are only so many hours in the day. You know there's a spot you can haul up some bounty by a swirl upon the top of the water with a few shadows circling beneath. From there, it's as simple as piloting over the top of it, dropping the lure, which brings you into a few different mini-games. These are all timing based and not too difficult, but they make the process feel a little bit better than if you just had to float over and wait. If you're successful with your timing, the catch will be reeled in faster, which helps in getting the most out of your day. But here's the catch though. If you miss your timing, you won't lose your prey, but it will increase the timer. As everything in the game is a fight against daylight, you'll definitely be wanting to avoid this as much as possible. You also have to be aware of the space in the boat. Basically another minigame in itself, the space you have to store fish, tools, and supplies on your boat is limited. It's a small bit of fun to do your best to organize your catch just right so you can carry the most you can. When you're satisfied with your load, head back into one of the towns scattered through the map and sell it all to the traders for that booty. But this isn't the only way to make your living, as you can deploy crab traps, which you set and revisit after a few days to reap the benefits. And additionally, a little further into the game, you can outfit your vessel with a trawler, allowing you to passively catch fish as you navigate the world. These are really helpful if you're traveling somewhere or you just want to take a break from the fishing and inventory management and just explore the world. But in order to make the most of the limited time you have, you'll need to deploy your implements properly. The developers did make a neat choice in that time doesn't progress when you aren't moving and you're inactive. It pushes you to make decisions about what to do and where to go, knowing that at 6 p.m. is nightfall and it's always around the corner. It's not hugely punishing. It's an interesting shift away from what I expected with, the constantly ticking clock where you're racing against time in that manner. Another way to make the most out of your day is to invest in upgrades for your craft. There are 4 choices here: rod space, net space, engine space, and light space. Simply, these all increase the area on your boat for these upgrades. The materials for these need to be dredged, up from below, similar to the fishing mini-games, but with a twist where you need to avoid the gaps in a spinning wheel. I was personally pretty invested in engine space because I enjoyed zooming around on the waves, but this also ended up having a downside for me since I ended up bashing my ship against the rock more times than I can count due to carelessness combined with a quick acceleration and momentum. You might notice that I mentioned space for all the upgrades, but you first need this space and then you need to purchase the upgrade. At the beginning of the game, there isn't much available, but as you progress, you can use research parts that you find throughout the world to unlock different tech. I stupidly overlooked the navigation tab on the research selection screen, so I ended up going 100% into rods, which ended up being very useful actually at the end of the game, but I could have spent my points in a more balanced manner going up the different tech trees. But even if you fully upgrade everything and are super efficient, there'll still probably be some times where you're caught out on the waters after dark. The game simulates your deteriorating sanity and panic via an eye in the upper center of the screen as your mind wanders due to lack of sleep and the suffocating blackness. The redder it becomes, the more pronounced the effects. This manifests itself in hallucinations and spawns of creatures which will attack your vessel, sometimes doing a little bit of damage and causing you to lose your catch, or in a worst case scenario, introducing you to Davy Jones's locker. Best practice is obviously to avoid being out on the water at night, or at least having an exit strategy in case things get hairy. Even in the daytime though, although there are some countermeasures, the best option when you encounter a hostile creature is usually just to get out of dodge as fast as you can. Dredge is a wonderfully concise game. The story presents itself in a careful manner and doesn't rush, allowing your imagination to fill in the details. The locale is serene and terrible, both at the same time, but something about floating around those little islands fishing is just really fun. There could have been a little more variation maybe in the ways to deal with the enemies and some more variety in the fishing minigames, but perhaps this may have moved the game too far into more of a simulation or action genre, and it would have lost something. For what it is, Dredge tells an intriguing and ominous story with a little fishing and upgrade management on the side. It doesn't need to be any more than that.